The President, please be seated. The court is now back in session. We would like to now hand over to the co-prosecutor to proceed with their questions. You may now proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Yun Kim, my colleague has asked you already this morning a number of questions about a meeting that you attended in 1973 where Noon Chea provided instructions on cooperatives. I have just a few additional follow-up questions about that meeting. First of all, can you tell us how long did the meeting with Noon Chea last? How long was that meeting?
Response. The meeting in Phum Da with Noon Chea took place for the whole day, from morning until the afternoon.
And in the testimony you gave this morning, you described how a distinction was made between mutual assistance groups, low-level cooperatives, and high-level cooperatives. Could you explain to the court what the difference was between a mutual assistance group, a low-level cooperative, and a high-level cooperative?
Response. The mutual assistance group, lower level and higher level cooperatives are the three different groups. The mutual assistance group comprised of 5 to 10 families to mutually assist one another. The product or the production happened at each respective land of each individual. However, with the lower in the cooperative level, people had some lands or cattle and worked together. However, the distribution of production or labor depends on the number of cattle and tools they have. With regard to the high-level cooperative, everything had to be placed in the cooperative collectively, and the division of work is only divided according to the labor force or the labor itself. However, in our commune, there was no such groups as a mutual assistance group or lower and higher level groups because Jai, the guy who inducted me to the revolution, introduced the new idea in which everyone had to really belong to the whole group.
This new idea that Chet introduced, did you understand this to be something that came from the party center, or was this an idea that Chet came up with by himself?
Response. At that time, I also made some comments because in the meeting, Mr. Noon Chea chaired the meeting in Da village. Then Mr. Chait said that we shall not go back to our location. We had to also meet at some bowl, and that there would never be mutual assistance group or lower or higher level cooperatives. We had to join hand working at a community instead. And he said that he would be the one in charge of introducing this idea, and if anyone else was fearful or afraid to propagandize or to disseminate information concerning this new concept, then he would be willing to act on their behalf to defend his idea. I really opposed the idea because I knew that such idea was against the order from the upper echelon. However, as a community, as long as the judge was more superior, we had to listen to him, and we had to unite. And whatever the order rendered from him, we only had to do as what we wished. However, on one occasion, at dawn, Mr. Chat came and really gave a speech to the people, and he was very angry. However, everyone noted that he didn't do properly when it comes to the implementation of the line rendered by the upper level.
What happened to Tachet during the Democratic Kampuchea period?
Answer. Chum Yong was the real name of Tachet. As far as I know, he was transferred by the upper echelon from Sambo to Krati due to the moral issue with women. He committed some moral mistake with women. He had some special rooms for him to work with women. And due to the women's issues, and some women died as a result, namely one woman who was a teacher at the district level. She died in 1971 or 72 as she was strangled by him. And it was rumored that she was raped by Tachet. For that reason, he was transferred to Krati. And later on, I heard that he was arrested due to the moral issues. Later on, I heard the villagers said that they made Tachet in Svai Prosop district, but that he was arrested, although I am unclear regarding this matter.
Did you ever see Tachet again after he was sent away to Karachi?
Answer. He was transferred to Karachi. I met him once after that, but we did not talk to each other. It was before the celebration of the 17th April 75 victory. And that was the first anniversary in 1976. During that ceremony, I saw him, but we did not speak. And actually, I saw him on the podium at the time.
When was it that Chet was arrested and disappeared? What year?
Response. I am unclear, but I could say it was around 1976, that is, after the celebration of the victory. He disappeared after that.
And going back again to your meeting with Nuon Chea in 1973, did he provide any instructions at that meeting on how food should be distributed within cooperatives?
Answer. When I saw him, he gave instructions for the establishment of the mutual groups, the low level and the high level cooperatives, and not to establish a community, and that such establishment should be based on the real situation at each base. Importantly, that we should discuss amongst each other and to avoid any conflict regarding the division of the workforce at the base, so that issues should not be arose at the established cooperative.
And during the one-day meeting with Nuon Chea that you attended, were there any subjects other than cooperatives that were discussed? For example, was there any discussion about the ongoing war against the Lon Nol regime?
Answer. Regarding the war against the Lon Nol, he initially told us about the situation of attacking the enemy and our target, and that we actually progressed in our war, and that we would liberate the country. And that was all what he talked regarding the war. However, the main theme of that one-day meeting was the organization of the cooperatives in the Cambodian society.
When you say that he talked about attacking the enemy, who was the enemy?
Answer. The enemy at the time was that he referred to the Lon Nol forces, and that the forces was backed by the American imperialists.
Do you know whether Nuon Chea came to Kretchi province often in the years prior to April 1975?
Answer. Regarding his visit to Kretchi province, I did not know his previous trips. I only knew when I saw him on that one-day meeting. That's all I knew.
Did you, although that was the only time you met with him, did you hear whether he had come to Kretchi on previous occasions?
Answer. I did not know. I was not told by anybody that he made any previous, occasionally or frequent visit to the province.
Thank you, Mr. Young Kim. I want to now talk about the issue of movements of population. Prior to the 17th of April 1975, were there any movements of the population within Kretchi province? And specifically, I have in mind Kretchi provincial town. Was there a time when people were moved out of Kretchi town and moved into either mutual assistance groups or cooperatives in the country?
Answer. regarding the movement of people from Kati province to other areas, it was beyond my knowledge. As in my commune, people were not moved. They stayed where they were staying. As for the Cham Muslim, while I was at Watanak commune, they were transferred from other region to that area. They could arrive, they could came from Swai Kambata area.
ហើយចំពោះប្រជាជននៅក្នុង
As for the people in the entire province, I did not know whether there was any movement of those people.
Where were you on the 17th of April, 1975?
Answer. On the 17th April 1975, I was living in a Watanak commune.
When did you first hear about the party's plan to evacuate Phnom Penh and the other cities in Cambodia? How did you first learn of that?
Answer. In regards to the evacuation of people, I only knew when I saw new people arriving, for example, at Sambo while I was there. I saw people arriving by boat and by other means, and I asked them where they were going. They told me they were evacuated to come to that area. So the 17 April people were evacuated by boat to that area. But I did not know when the evacuation itself initiated.
For now, let's talk about the period in April 1975 when you were the chief of Watanak commune. Were there any new people or evacuees who arrived in Watanak commune after the 17th of April 1975?
Answer. As I just stated, in 1975, I saw the Cham Muslims arriving at the Watanak commune. And from my estimation, there were between 30 to 40 families. When I asked them, they said they came from Aswai Kambat commune or from the Bai area. And after the liberation, when I went to Sambo, I saw people already arriving in Sambo. They were the 17 April people evacuated from Phnom Penh. And later on, some people coming from Tamu, they were evacuated, and that was in late 77 or early 78. They were from Tamu, that is from Memut district.
Just so we're clear, the people, the new people that you saw evacuated to Sambo commune, was that at the time when you became the chief of Sambo commune, or was that something that took place prior to you becoming the chief of Sambo commune?
Answer. When I went to become chief of the Sambo communes, the 17 people were already there. They had been evacuated before I took up my position as the chief of the commune there. And of course, I knew the best people who were living in the Sambo commune, so I could recognize the 17 April people.
We'll come back to the year when you became chief of Sambo commune a little later, and I'll ask you some more questions about that at that time. Right now, I'd like to turn to the subject of communications and reporting within the sector and district and communes in Karachi. Can you, why don't we start? Can you tell us that during the time that you were the secretary of either Watanak or Sambo communes, how did you report to your district secretary on the situation and work in your commune?
Answer. During the DK period, we held a meeting weekly that's meant for all the commune chiefs, far or near. We had to report about the enemy situation in our respective commune. If there were any conflicts against the revolutions, such conflicts should be reported. Then we would report about the production. And that was the most important issue in the report. And thirdly, we would report about the health of the people in our respective commune. And for the culture, there were some reports as well. However, the classes for the people to study were only up to level 3. That is the third year, that's all. And we reported to the district committee. The participants in such a meeting, a reporting meeting, comprised of 2 representatives or 1 representative from each commune. And usually once the meeting in this week finished, then we would plan for the next week meeting. There was no need for a letter or invitation, as it was held regularly on a weekly basis.
And in regards to your reporting on the enemy situation, who were considered enemies during the period of democratic Kampuchea when you had these weekly meetings with the district committee?
Answer. Regarding the weekly reporting, usually was criticized by the district level, in particular in relation to the reporting regarding the enemy situation. I found it extremely difficult to find any enemy. In my eyes, I only saw people working. And if a person was reported that he was lazy in carrying out his or her work, then the burden would be on me. It would mean that I did not educate such a person well. So from this perspective, I found it very difficult to report anything regarding the enemy situation. So because I myself I could not find any enemy, not unlike some other peoples that they report about people were careless in transplanting the rice seedling. So personally, I found it difficult when it comes to reporting about the enemy situation. as I did not have any enemy to be reported through. On one occasion, there was a report that a person was walking behind the village and eating the tree leaves, and I reported that. But that was not the people from my village. I never accused any of my villagers to be arrested. People who used to live with me at the time are still living in Phnom Penh, and many of them know me. Even Mr. Thun Sarai, the president of ad hoc organization, as well as Mr. Hu. If they were not living with me at the time, they would have been gone already. Even Tahom, he survived, but he passed away later. And except Tachib. Tachib was the father of my friend, and I did not know about his issue. If I knew, I would have helped him, and he would have survived. So frankly, I never reported anything bad about my villagers, and that is all.
Did other commune chiefs report on enemies in their communes at these meetings with the district?
Answer. Regarding other communes, yes, there were reports about the enemy situations, about people talking about this or that, and as a result, some people were detained in their communes. The reporting issue is a death or leave issue, because in most of the communes, people had been arrested. For example, like in Watana village, after Mr. Ong Samon replaced me, there were arrests. At that time, I was transferred to become commune chief of Sambo, and later on, Mr. Ong Samon was arrested and replaced by Kanchon and Jia Chim. And the True later on had been arrested and replaced by Mr. Ian, and Mr. Ian subsequently arrested. And then a person came from the B3 website replaced him, and that was almost in 1979. As for the other commune, including Kapung Cham or other commune, many of those people, including the commune committees, had been arrested and killed. As for the Relu, rather Kabao Dumrai commune, that is Mr. Chon, he had been arrested and killed. So it was extremely difficult, as he reported, that is the community reported about other people, and other people also reported about him.
And the other commune chiefs who would report and identify enemies, how did they know who was to be considered an enemy? Were there instructions, for example, in revolutionary flag as to who should be considered an enemy?
Answer. Regarding the revolutionary flag, there were some instructions, but I cannot recall it. Other communes reported in regard to the enemy situation. Let me give an example. In 1978, Mr. G assigned me to measure a dam in the Watana commune, that a dam could be built there. So I was instructed to measure that area, whether a dam could be constructed in that area, and upon my inspection, yes, a dam could be constructed with the forces that I would recommend. Then he would assign the workforce. I would say 500 people workforce would take a month and 2 months. If 1,000 workforce would be, it would take 1 month to build that dam. During the construction of the dam, there was a young youth who was sick and then went back to the house. And in the Watana village, that young man was sent back to the work site, but he requested to be treated with medicine first. And I requested him to be treated first. But then Chiu and Chun refused, and then that young man went to report to the district regarding that, and without reasons, Chiu and Chun were arrested and executed by the district. Later on, he knew about the false reporting by that young man, so the young man was later arrested and executed. Most of the reports talked about the lazy workforce, about the carelessness in carrying out the work. That were most of the contents of the reports. Also, foul speech was also reported. For example, that the revolutionary was too strict. In some communes, for example, people were waken up at 3 a.m. and that was strict. And if that is the case, then maybe the food was not sufficient to provide to the workforce in that particular commune.
Following up on the last example you just gave, were people who criticized the party or opposed the party considered enemies?
Answer. Regarding the conference, a conference was held every 3 months at the cooperative. Well, I just arrived at the Sambo commune. At the Watana commune, during the conference that was held every 3 months, people could raise criticism issue. However, at the Sambo district, I placed myself to be criticized by the commune, and I was surprised as people said that this is the first time that such a leadership was placed to be criticized by the villagers. I myself, I would be glad if I have been criticized, so that I would use that as a tool to improve myself. So I leave it open for people to criticize me, but in my opinion, this is an exception, because usually district level or commune level committee disliked being criticized, and they would take revenge if they were to be criticized, which is against my ideal opinion. That is, I would be glad if I have been criticized. But in other areas, if you are criticized, then you would be considered the enemy.
Thank you for clarifying that. I wasn't asking so much about people who criticized the commune chief or people who criticized the district chief. What I was interested in is whether people who criticized or opposed the revolution, the party, or goals of the revolution, like collectivization, were those people considered enemies and reported at district meetings?
Answer. As for the criticism or giving comments, nobody dare oppose the party's lines. For instance, at the cooperative, they would raise the issues of food, whether the food is sufficient or not. They would raise the issue of individual criticism. For instance, if I put myself to be criticized, then I would be criticized on a particular point regarding the carrying out of my task. For example, that I did not give sufficient advice to a particular individual. Frankly speaking, between 1973 to the time that I went to live at the website, I did not eat any porridge or gruel. I always ate rice because my commune had the ability to sustain by eating rice. Because if people had enough to eat, then our forces would be strong to carry out the work. So our production would increase in my commune. Wherever I went, my people would eat rice, not porridge. So we always self-sustained. I considered myself not as a leader, but a patient or a farmer amongst them to serve them as well. Not to be a leader to order them to do this or that, and that is my ideology that I carried out until the present time, that I ensure that there is a safety in my commune and there is enough food to eat in my commune.
You talked earlier this morning about annual study sessions that lasted 15 days at the provincial town. During those annual study sessions, was the issue of enemies, and in particular the need to be vigilant to discover internal enemies, was that a subject that was discussed at those study sessions?
Response. During the annual study sessions at Karachi province, the sessions were conducted at An Tong Vien village. There was a political hall, and people would attend the sessions, including the enemy situation and production, which was the main part of the agenda of the study sessions.
Who provided the instruction? Who led those study sessions?
Response. The sector committee was the one who presented the documents and chaired the sessions. Those included Ta Yi, Ta Kun. Ta Yi educated us on economy, when Ta Kun was lecturing on security matters.
And when you say that they presented documents, what type of documents did they present at these study sessions?
Response. There were several documents, as I already indicated, but since this happened a long time ago, I cannot recollect the details. However, the documents include those that cover the enemies and the production.
And you said that it was Tak Kun who made presentations on security issues. What type of issues or subjects would Tak Kun talk about relating to security?
Response. Regarding security, he mentioned about the tactics employed by the enemies, because during the time we attacked the enemies, we know who the enemy were. However, people who live together in our community, those who created troubles, who incited some movement opposing the community or the party by saying that there would be an outside enemy, these people also regarded as those who incited the enemy situation or regarded as enemies. Some people could have said that the Vietnamese would be coming very closely and the country would plunge into chaotic situation. So this part of activity regarded as the activity employed by enemies.
We've talked about weekly meetings that you attended with the district committee. During the time that you were a commune chief, did you send written reports to the district secretary or district office?
Response. At that time, we rarely wrote to them. We had to do that in person, reported to them in persons. We sat together and shared the information we had. Sometimes we had to sit on the floor, sometimes on the chairs. But after the liberation, the meeting setting was better prepared because we had proper place where we could meet other than sitting directly on the floor as we did in the past.
During the study sessions or political education meetings that you attended, were you ever given any instruction on the party's policy relating to Buddhism and pagodas?
Response. Regarding religion, there was education on this. We were told that the revolution shall not be done twice. First, we were advised to start the revolution movement and educate the people, at the same time not to believe in any religion. Ask them to believe in religion, and that could be included in our revolution, and we had to try to avoid the cultural revolution. As we know that in 1966 there was a cultural revolution in China where religions were all smashed and oppressed. And we would not want that to happen in Cambodia, because we would like a kind of one thing happen at the same time, and we do not want it to be repeated or to do it twice.
During the period of the democratic Kampuchea regime between April 1975 and January 1979, were people in Karachi province allowed to practice Buddhism?
Response. Buddhism came to an end in 1976. Indeed, immediately after the liberation, there were some monks who still practiced Buddhism. In July or August, there were a few monks who remained ordained, but later on they were sent to their district of Orang Au, Piam Chiang commune. So I can say that there were a few monks in Karachi province before 1976, but after 1976 there were no longer any monks. So there was no more monks by 1976. I think by late 1976 when there was no more monk.
What happened to the monks that you mentioned who were sent away back to their district? Were they required to disrobe?
Response. I learned that when he was sent there, he was not disrobed. He may have disrobed himself, but after the liberation, then he became reordained. He asked that he be not disrobed at the Karachi province. He asked that he be allowed to wait until he moved to his district to disrobe himself. But now he already passed away after he reordained.
What happened to the pagodas in Karachi province during the democratic Kampuchea regime?
Response. Pagodas in Karachi province, the majority of them were not affected because in the commune where I live, there were some form of pagodas or places where monks could practice Buddhism, although they were not proper places. But as I indicated, that there was no much change to the pagodas, because we could also see that the pagodas were not destroyed, and when we wanted to have a meeting in the pagoda, we were not allowed to do so. And I can say that the pagodas remain intact.
When you say that you were not allowed to meet in pagodas, who was it that instructed you that you were not allowed to meet in pagodas?
Response. I think it doesn't mean that we were not entirely allowed to have a meeting at the pagoda, but at one of the pagodas they reserved a place for meeting. But in general, people were not allowed to enter the compound of the pagoda.
And just so I'm clear, you've indicated that the majority of pagodas were not destroyed. Were people allowed to openly practice Buddhism in pagodas during the period of democratic Kampuchea?
Response. During the democratic Cambodia regime, there were no monks, so no one practiced Buddhism. It was an end to Buddhism. No monks, no religion. So I could say that it was an end to Buddhism, no pagodas.
Were there some pagodas in Kretchi that were destroyed during the democratic Kampuchea period?
No.
Response. During the decay period, I observed that the pagodas in the vicinity where I worked and lived were intact. The pagodas remained pagodas, but they were used for other purposes. For example, they were used as warehouses or as the kiln where bricks were made, tiles were made, and in some pagodas, young people were made to live in them.
Did you know a pagoda that was called Wat Antang Vien that was in Kretchi district?
A response. Indeed, yes, Antong Vien Pagoda is in Kretchi province. I went there on several occasions because we had to attend political sessions there, because we studied at Antong Vien Pagoda.
And do you know what happened to Wat Antang Vien during the democratic Kampuchea period? Did it remain intact through the whole period?
Response. Although I attended sessions at the pagoda, frankly, I never inspected the whole pagoda building and complex, and I have no knowledge of what happened to the pagoda. I attended political sessions at the location behind the pagoda, and I am afraid I cannot know what happened to the physical or the building itself of the pagoda.
Did you hear of any pagodas during the decay period that were dismantled, taken apart, and used to build things like dams? Did you hear any instance in which that happened?
Response. I don't know, but I know that Sambo Pagoda, the 100 pillars pagoda, became decay, and some of the roof tiles were removed so that they could be used to build to use as the roof of a hospital.
Turning to another subject, during the study sessions and political education meetings that you attended, was there any discussion or instruction about the party's policy towards the Vietnamese people?
Response. During the political study sessions, it depends on the situation. During the time when we fought the enemies, the Lonol, we were talking about the Lonol soldiers and the Americans. After the liberation, we had conflict with the Vietnamese, so we had to study the Vietnamese tactics. So I can say that the content of the study sessions varied according to different circumstance, social circumstance.
Were there any Vietnamese people who lived in Karachi province prior to the 17th of April, 1975?
Response. Before that, before the 17th of April 1975, I am not aware, because there had been a lot of Vietnamese people living in Karachi provinces, in communes all across the province. But in 1974, when the Vietnamese troop had withdrawn, the Vietnamese people had to move back to their country along with the troops, or after the troop had withdrawn. And also some Vietnamese people had marriages. They got married with Cambodian people, and they lived there.
Do you recall whether after the liberation on the 17th of April 1975, whether the remaining Vietnamese people in Karachi province were deported to Vietnam following the liberation?
Response. I don't know much about this. I don't know what happened to the Vietnamese after the liberation, but in my cooperatives in Sambo commune, after the liberation, there were 2 Vietnamese people who got married to Cambodians, but they had been living in the community all along without any problem, and later on they passed away, but their children still live there.
And also during the study sessions or political education meetings that you attended, do you recall there being any discussion or instructions about the party's policy towards the Cham or Muslim people?
Response. During the study sessions, I had never learned anything about the Cham or Muslim people because these people were regarded as Khmer or Cambodians, and they were never regarded as another race or national in any document taught to us.
Well, during the democratic Kampuchea period, were the Cham people in Karachi, including the people who were in your commune, were they allowed to practice their religion?
Response. With regard to religion, it doesn't matter Buddhism or Islam, no one was allowed to practice these religions. They could have been doing so, but only in secret. But in general, they were not allowed to do so. In some cases, these Cham or Muslim people were forced to eat pork.
Who was it that forced them to eat pork?
Response. So far as I know, it happened everywhere. Almost, I say. At every cooperative. At some places, there was a very strict policy where the Cham people were denied of food, including prahok, for example. Even they wanted to have some prahok, but they were not allowed to have them.
And during the democratic Kampuchea period in Karachi, were the Cham people allowed to wear their traditional clothing?
Response. During the decay period, when it comes to clothing or dressing, we noted that this Islam people or Chams arrived at the location at a later date. However, I had observed that there was no change to the clothing. I mean, everyone was seen wearing the same black shirt and pants or trousers. So the Chams people wore the same clothing as we did.
Were the Cham people allowed to speak their own traditional language?
Response. With regard to the language, there was no problem with that. People could speak their own language at home, but when they came to work, they had to speak Cambodian. But at home, with their peers who spoke Cham language, they would communicate with one another in their own language. No one stopped them.
And were the Cham people allowed to continue to live together in their traditional villages, or were they dispersed amongst the Khmer population?
Response. When they were evacuated to a village, they would be made to live in a big mansion where they shared the house, because they would not be allowed to ask to live in a traditional village. Because, for example, if a person named A had a big house, then these people would be asked to live together with that person.
And you said that some cooperatives had a strict policy to deny giving prahok to the Cham people. Can you explain why that was?
Response. I cannot respond to this precisely, because sometimes in some cooperatives they had their firm position on what kind of food to be offered to the people in cooperative. But in some cooperatives, this rule would be not as strict as in other places, that they would be allowed to have prahok. Cham or Islam people had a culture of killing animals. For example, every now and then they would ask that a cattle be slaughtered, and in my location this was allowed, because they claimed that if they had to really slaughter the cattle by themselves, they felt good, and that we allowed them to do it. The President. Thank you, Mr. Co-Prosecutor, and thank you, the witness. Since it is now appropriate time for lunch adjournment, the chamber will adjourn for lunch, and the next session will be resumed by 1:30. Court officer is now instructed to ensure that Mr. Witness and his duty counsel be well coordinated and accommodated during the adjournment, and have them return to the courtroom by 1:30. Counsel, you may now proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm just on my feet to make our habitual request that Nguyen Chia be permitted to retire to the holding cell for the afternoon session. And just to clarify for the record that Dada refers to Dadaism, and that, of course, is the early 20th century movement that rejected logic and reason in favor of nonsense, irrationality, and chaos. It is not, as was suggested to me over the break, does not refer to don't ask, don't answer, although I would say that that seems to encapsulate this chamber's approach to our defense team quite well. Thank you.
The President. The chamber has noted the request by Mr. Nguyen Chia through his counsel. He asked that he be allowed to retire to the holding cell to observe the proceedings from there, and that he would like to be excused. The chamber therefore grants the request that he be allowed to observe the proceedings from his holding cell for the remainder of the day. Mr. Nguyen Chia has already waived his right to be present in the courtroom, and the chamber asks that counsel submit the written waiver signed or given thumbprint by Mr. Nguyen Chia. The AV booth officers are now instructed to ensure that the audiovisual equipments are well linked to the holding cell so that Mr. Nguyen Chia can observe the proceedings from there when we resume in the afternoon. Security personnel are now instructed to bring Mr. Nuon Chea and Khieu Samphan to the holding cells and have Mr. Khieu Samphan return to the courtroom in the afternoon session when the court resumes. Mr. Nuon Chea can remain in the holding cell. The court is adjourned.
សូមក្រោកចូល